Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. First off, I just want to say thank you for positive comments and constructive comments and all the support for my previous video. I'm really happy with how it's been received by everyone. I'm working on trying to produce some more similar themed comment to that video and to contribute more to this discussion and actively fighting against racism in archaeology. And I really don't want that to just be like a token video that I'm doing reviews. If you have been tuning into me for a little while on my channel, the title of this video and the topic I don't think will be a complete surprise to you. But today I'm going to be talking about why I no longer work in the field, which of course leads to the question of whether or not I could still call myself an archaeologist. I'd like to think I can, but today's going to be around the story of why I transitioned out of doing field work, etc., what my career path has been. So keep watching if you're interested in hearing more about that. I think a lot of people have the impression that archaeologists only do field work and that is the only kind of career option that's open for you if you want to be an archaeologist, which is not true. I've already done a video talking about all the different career strands or paths that you can take within archaeology, and today we're just going to kind of be talking about my particular path. Long story short, I moved from a professional archaeologist fieldwork role into a office-based role, and in the past year I have stopped doing fieldwork completely. So it's been over a year since I last actually got into the field and was physically digging and investigating archaeological material. I still work at a heritage professional archaeology company, but I am no longer directly involved in archaeological projects, as in I don't do finds work, I'm not contributing to the publications, etc. Before I get on to what I actually do, I'm going to kind of tell you the story of how I got there. Again, if you've been here for a while, you will have heard me talk about this before, but for those of you who need a refresher or who are new, basically in professional commercial archaeology, career progression can take a long time. And if you are looking to move up the ladder with your career, chances are that you will eventually end up in a job where you're spending the majority of your time in an office writing up and managing archaeological projects rather than actually digging the material. This obviously isn't the only career path that you can take, and not everybody wants to do that. Some people are happy just digging for their entire careers. However, there are people like myself who want to progress and move forward with their career. This can take a very long time, and this is not something that's unique to archaeology. Obviously, you can't walk into every single job out there and expect to get a promotion on a very timely schedule every year, etc. These things are very much determined by what positions the company has available, what they can afford, what they need, etc. What you want does not dictate how things are going to go. But particularly in archaeology, seniority and eligibility for promotions is very much dictated by the amount of experience that you have digging, particularly in British archaeology. If you look at the more senior job advertisements going for commercial professional archaeology companies, like one of the things that you must have will be a set amount of years of experience. And obviously the higher up a position you want, the more years of experience you need to have. So in that case, it can take a very, very long time, because you also obviously need to be, in addition to having the years of experience, you need to be able to fit the other criteria for the job, and you need to be the right person for that job. In my personal story, I worked in the field for about 2.5 years doing digging, and at that point in my career, I was starting to think, okay, I've been doing this for long enough, I'm ready to start looking for a way to start moving up the ladder. I had gotten my driving license, which is kind of one of those key things that you need to be able to make the step from just a basic site assistant to a supervisor. And I was starting to have quite a bit of dig experience. I was also trying to find a way to get back to Edinburgh, where my partner and my life was based, because at that point in time I was actually living and digging in Lincoln, all paid for by the company I was working on. At this time I had an opportunity to go for a job that was outside of this traditional structure. A job came up for training at an archaeological company. So this would be working within a department that they had that was dedicated to training their workforce. A big problem that archaeologists have is that training is not consistent across companies. Some people do it, some people say they do it and don't, and everyone does things like a little bit differently, or sometimes to different standards. So people from different companies going to work somewhere else sometimes need a little bit of help adjusting to a new system, etc. As well as the fact that anyone that's new to archaeology needs to be properly trained into what to do, rather than just dropped in the deep end and having to pick everything up as they're going along. This job that I applied for was above my level, but you know, the worst thing that you can do when you're applying for these kinds of jobs is just not bother, because then it's automatically a no. I thought at least it would be a good exercise for me in trying to develop a CV, maybe getting to an interview, getting a little bit more experience with that. And for the initial job that I applied for, I did actually get turned down. I didn't get it. It was given to someone with much more experience both in archaeology and in teaching and training. However, when I applied for that job, I put on my cover letter the fact that I do this YouTube channel. I thought it was something that would work in my favor, because even though I'm not necessarily directly training people in archaeological methods and techniques through this channel, I am in a way training people for the archaeological job market. I feel a bit more like a guidance or like a jobs counselor than an archaeological professor in a way. But I felt like, and I still feel like, this channel really shows that I care about making sure that people working in archaeology are prepared for what it's going to be like. And clearly I'm interested in imparting the knowledge that I have to people who don't already have it. I got turned down by this job, but I had put my YouTube channel on the CV, and I actually got contacted by the company and the person who was hiring for this job, who said to me that they gave the job to someone else who was more qualified. Fair enough. But they really, really liked my CV, and they have another position coming up that's a lower level, still above what I was doing, that they thought I would be perfect for, and they would like to see if I would be interested in that. There is a lesson here as well, though, in that it got to the point where I think I had to have a phone call because this person's emails were going straight to my junk mail, so I didn't see any of them. So there's a lesson there in that you should always be checking your junk mail if you're applying for a job, because even though I applied to their official email and everything, whatever I got back, for some reason, Gmail sent to my junk mail and almost meant that I missed out on this opportunity. This job that I was offered was initially a temporary contract, but as I understood it, it might be able to lead to something more permanent in future. It was a step up the ladder for me in both pay and seniority. And while this company worked throughout the UK, they did have an office in Edinburgh, so that might eventually mean I get to end up there. So I talked it over with my partner, because it was going to initially mean I was spending more time away from home rather than being there. But we kind of decided that the end possibility of me ending up in Edinburgh with a more stable, permanent, at-home job was a better opportunity than me just staying on the project I was on, which was never going to get any closer to Edinburgh than it currently was. Initially, this job was just training, and in particular, I was training a group of archaeologists over a set period of time. But after I kind of passed this trial of a couple months, I was offered a longer contract up in the Edinburgh office to do a job that was a mix of training and marketing for this company. The reason that it was a mixed role rather than just training was because at that point in time, they didn't see the training role being full-time. They also had an opening in that they needed somebody to look after the marketing in the company, because the person who had done that had gone on to something else. And my YouTube channel also helped me here, because obviously it demonstrated to the people at the company that I at least had a knack for marketing, for talking about archaeology to the public in a way that is accessible, as well as the fact that I clearly know how to use social media, which is very much, I think, something that a lot of older archaeologists sometimes struggle to navigate. So having somebody that kind of knows how to use it, and the ins and outs, and things that work, things that don't, things that appeal to audiences, etc., is obviously an asset. I want to stress that neither of these two jobs that I was doing is common in archaeology. I would say that 90% of the jobs that you see advertised in archaeology in the UK on Badger, at least, which is the British archaeological jobs resource that is the place to go if you're looking for a job in archaeology. Yeah, like 90% of the jobs are, I would say, field work related or adjacent. Probably 8% are for specialists like illustrators, finds people, etc. And then like 2% or less are for jobs outside of that sphere. I think a lot of this is because what I do is technically an overhead job for the company. So when you look at the way companies are set up, you have jobs that are billable. So the company charges people for what you do, and that's how they bring their income in. And then you have stuff that is overhead, which are the things that you kind of just need in order to be able to run a good company. So you're talking about your admin department, finance, HR, training, marketing, etc. These are things that don't directly bring money into the business, but they are a key part of being able to run a business smoothly and well. Within archaeology, overhead jobs are staffed sometimes by archaeologists who've just picked this job up because there was maybe a lull in work at one point and it needed doing, and then they just stayed in it. And sometimes they are staffed by professionals in those fields who have come to work for an archaeology company just like they would for any company. Finance is a good example of that. You don't have a lot of archaeologists who are also accountants. You need generally an accountant to be running your finance department. Also, archaeology companies don't tend to be huge. So if companies are big enough that they have full-time overhead departments and positions, they're generally not very big. Most companies, I would say, run things like the people that I work for do. They only think there's enough work for someone to do that for 2 days a week. So they'll maybe mix a role, or perhaps they only have one person in that department, but that person does like everything and it's one full-time role. They don't really have room for other people to come in and do it. I only personally know of one company in the UK who has more than one marketing person, and I think that they are a team of 3. So generally marketing and archaeology is not exactly the biggest pool to swim in terms of jobs, which is something that I find incredibly ironic sometimes, because one of the biggest complaints in archaeology is when traditional media, etc., get things wrong about us. And marketing are generally the people who are in charge of a narrative. So if you have a decent marketing person or marketing strategy, you have a much better way of controlling what information about you and your company and your projects goes out. So I find it really ironic when companies that maybe don't have a lot of marketing or a lot of their resources turned towards marketing complain about that, because they could have more control. They just choose not to because they don't think it's worth investing in. I don't know. Bit of a tangent there. But one of the reasons that I decided to continue with this job and then add the kind of marketing side of things onto it was because it was going to allow me to be based in Edinburgh. So I was going to be able to actually go home most nights, seeing my partner, actually live in the place that I rented, and I wasn't going to have to be spending my winters outside in the freezing cold and rain. While this was an office-based job, through the training aspect of it, I was still able to go out into the field a couple times a year. This was because obviously we can't train people to do archaeology just in the office. It does need to be done in the field. And sometimes as well, they would maybe just need some extra help on a job. So I would go down, do some training for people, and then I would maybe spend the rest of the week digging just on my own as a regular archaeologist, which was quite nice because it still meant I got to do some traveling, I still got to do some digging, I still got to work on some projects. I had also never actually worked for that company previously as an archaeologist. It allowed me to try and familiarize myself with the way that they kind of did things and what they expected from the people that were working for them, which was helpful for when I was delivering training to people. The marketing side of things was obviously quite different. That was something that entirely could be done from our office. The things that I was doing for my marketing part of my job were things like looking after social media channels, doing things for their website, like just updating it with anything that needed updating. I would write blogs to be put on their news page based on stuff that was happening around the company. I helped arrange going to trade shows and events and a lot more. After working in this arrangement for a while, I kind of realized that I was enjoying the marketing side of things a lot more than I was the training side of things, for a variety of different reasons that I'm not going to get too much into. I brought this up with the company as something that I wanted to pursue and how I kind of saw my career going with them. And I was given the chance to transition full-time into a marketing role. This doesn't mean that my part-time marketing role for them went completely full-time. Instead, what ended up happening is I still work part-time for them doing marketing, and then I also work partly for their parent company that owns them, which is like a much bigger company which offers a much wider range of services than just archaeology. I've now been able to get a lot more experience outside of just doing marketing for archaeology, which has been very interesting to see how it's done for other, not quite businesses, but like other services and sectors. However, the downside to this is that I don't get to do fieldwork anymore. This is partly because it's not a part of what I need to do for part of my job anymore like it was for training. And the people that I work for have work for me to do, so they can't really afford for me to just like go and take a couple weeks to just go help out on a project because I feel like it. So I've gone in quite a different direction than I kind of thought I would when I started out working in commercial archaeology in the UK, which is not a bad thing, but it's definitely, I feel sometimes like I've put myself in a bit of a tricky spot, because if I wanted to ever go back to field archaeology, and I'm not saying that I do or don't, I would probably have to accept either a demotion or a reduction in pay if the company I work for was even happy to switch me over to doing that, because like I said before, they have to actually have a position available. And this is because I don't have enough field experience at the moment to work in my kind of equivalent job level if I were to go back to field work. And I've also now taken about 2 years off of working in the field, and I'm not saying that I've automatically lost all of that knowledge and I'm going back into the field a complete like newborn, but you know, there will be gaps. So I would need to actually go back and spend some time, probably like a year or two, refreshing. It would almost, but not quite be like starting from scratch. And personally, I'm not really interested in doing that from a like financial and career perspective at this moment in time. My options are quite limited if I want to also move jobs but stay in heritage, for reasons that I've kind of already talked about it being a very limited pool of jobs at archaeological companies, and also because it's marketing. For those jobs, I'd probably be competing with people who aren't archaeologists but have degrees in marketing. While I would think that I'm quite capable at my job and everyone's happy with what I'm doing, at the end of the day, I don't know a lot about traditional marketing. I'm just kind of picking everything up as I go along. So when I'm competing with somebody who has more of a background in the theories and methodologies of marketing, in some cases that might be a disadvantage. So can I still call myself an archaeologist? That's kind of a question I've been struggling with for a little while, because I don't want to stop calling myself an archaeologist. I still very much kind of identify as one, and I very much miss digging. I do miss that part of it, and in a way, I don't necessarily miss the aspects of it of, you know, getting up before the sun, digging all day in some really horrible conditions, getting covered in mud, and like breaking your back and your body for your job. So to kind of help myself bridge that gap where I'm not directly involved in field archaeological projects anymore, I've started taking up a little bit of volunteering. For about the past year, I've been working with my professor from my old field schools that I did 3 summers of digging on in Jordan. I've been using the skills that I've picked up in my job in relation to marketing to help her develop a website that's updated and everything for her field project so that she can disseminate all of her things online. I've also been doing a little bit of illustrating work for her just on like pottery and objects, which is like a very easy thing to pick up and does not qualify me as an illustrator at all, but is something that I can easily do and do remotely in the UK and doesn't require me to be like in Canada with her in person. I would love to be able to get back out in the field at some point digging, probably going to be on another volunteer project rather than for work. but there are a couple of complications that come along with that. The first one being that I am going to have to try and find a project that I can commute to easily from where I live, as well as the fact that it's going to be free or maybe only like a $5 to participate, because it's a real point of pride for me, I guess, in that I don't want to participate on an archaeological project where I have to pay someone for the privilege of doing something that I used to be paid to do. I also don't make enough money at the moment to be able to afford to pay a couple grand to go. And this might seem like a bit arrogant of me, but that's just, at this point in time, not something that I'm willing to do. You don't see accountants or other professionals going to volunteer their services and to pay someone to let them do their old job. It's a difficult thing to go through, because I know community archaeology projects will depend on people paying to participate to help them afford to run it. And in that case, like, I don't necessarily mind. Another difficulty with trying to find a project for this would be that it would have to be something that I could do on the weekends / like in my spare time, in a way. For a similar reason to the first one, I work a 9 to 5 at the moment. I'm free on the weekends, and just like any other working person who needs holidays, I'm not willing to use up the majority of my paid holiday time off of work to go and do work. Something like maybe doing a week or something would be good. But if you have suggestions of field projects in Scotland or something that I could get involved in that I should look into that would maybe fit some of those criteria, please put them down in the comments below. Obviously, with everything that's going on with COVID, a lot of volunteer and community archaeology projects aren't running at the moment. It's not necessarily something I think I'd be able to get into at the moment, but maybe in a year or two, it's something that I could maybe explore in a little bit more depth. All right, so that's everything for today about my career path, how it didn't exactly go where I would have necessarily expected it to go when I was first starting out in archaeology. I'm certainly happy with where I've ended up. As per usual, I hope that this video has been helpful for you guys, even in just being able to give you an idea of where things can go. Maybe it won't follow the exact same path as what I did, but also to give you an idea of, just because you start out in field archaeology and digging necessarily isn't something for you or what you can see yourself doing for forever, doesn't mean that you can't have a career in archaeology, in heritage, that isn't in some way associated with archaeology. As I said, I don't consider myself a field archaeologist anymore, but I don't necessarily consider myself to not be an archaeologist anymore. Certainly, I'm striving to still be involved in that world and in heritage, and I wouldn't necessarily count out me never working or digging in the field ever again in any kind of capacity. Do you agree with me? Do you think that I'm just a sham? Do you think that I can't count myself an archaeologist anymore because I don't dig up archaeological stuff? I'd be interested to know. Please put it down in the comments below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, as per usual, put them in the comments. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to watch more from me, please look at everything else that's on my channel and give me a subscribe and hit that bell button so that you know whenever I put out new videos. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!